What's next for IT? In today's economy, technology touches every aspect of the day-to-day operations of business. There has never been more pressure on IT to deliver for our organizations. So what can we expect over the next decade? We need to think differently about how we approach our work to continue to thrive into the future. This requires all of us to be intentional in how we look at our role going forward. Smart IT is an approach to getting the important things done by transforming the way we think, work, and lead. And now, let's disrupt the status quo, simplify the complex, and reduce risk the smart IT way. Welcome to another episode of the Smart IT Podcast. Today, I'm happy to welcome to the show, Diane. I'm looking forward to a great conversation with her. Hi, Diane. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you, William. Excited to be here. Really happy to engage in a conversation around smart IT.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you today. We're going to talk about a very important aspect of IT. Obviously, the show kind of emphasizes the people, the humans of IT. You know, a lot of people like to talk about the technology, AI, ML, big data, cloud. Very cool topics. But we really want to talk about and focus in on what's making all this possible, right? Organization of business is relying on IT to make all this magic happen behind the scenes. And it's the people, the men and women who are doing this. So let's start off right there and talk about the people aspect of IT itself.
Well, thank you. I would say when it comes to IT and the delivery of IT for any organization, it's all about the people. And it's the skills and the knowledge that those on your IT team bring. And so as we think about today's team and the leaders of tomorrow, we have to make sure that we're looking at, are they learning and growing where they need to learn and grow? Are they upskilling? Are they getting knowledge of new technologies as the pace of technology changes continues to move faster and faster? Are we talking to the front line of our people? Are we going to find out what the real challenges are, what the real needs are? Are we uncovering those? And then, because there's so many options for new technology, are we giving them a safe and supportive environment in which to test and to fail? We say failures allowed, but are we living that and breathing that and enabling our people to really test these new technologies to see what they could do for our business? And then all three of those require really the IT leadership role to change and be more intentional as you look at and focus on the skills your team needs to really lead the organization in a way that delivers new technologies to your customers.
Yeah, that's interesting because we talk about the people, the skill sets. It's interesting compared to maybe 2 decades ago. The rate of change today is just so fast, so rapid. That's really forcing everybody in IT to actually adapt faster. This constant learning, right? We've always had to learn continuously, but now if you're an engineer or architect or even a CIO, right, there's so many different things you need to keep adding to your professional skill set toolkit. So let's talk about some of the ways that when you're sitting there and you're looking up on the web and what's new, what's out there, and you're going into the office and people ask you, hey, can we do X, Y, and Z? Because they just heard about it. Let's take a step back and think about, okay, for an IT and that professional, how do you keep up with all the new shiny objects and, keep sane?
There's so many ways, and I think it's important for everyone on your team to be involved in the process. So when you think about, traditionally we've taken courses like Python's a new language, we took a course, or there's some new language coming out. Our team doesn't know Java, we take a course. So there's the classes and there's the conferences that we send our IT folks to. But I think it's starting to expand a lot beyond that. It's, to know what's coming, you have to look up and look out, and you have to talk to your internal customers, and you have to look externally. So, in addition to the structured, this is training we have available, this is training we think we need, this is a new vendor we're going to add training to our contract. We've got to get more aggressive with other ad hoc learning. So when our customers go to conferences, that's the time they always see new shiny bells,
Yeah.
right? The newest technology and the newest thing. So intentionally sending your PMO director over to talk to them, or sending your help desk person over to talk to them, but getting in a room and hearing what they're seeing, what they're liking about the new shiny bells, what they're not liking, what they think it could do for us, gathering that knowledge internally from your other peers and your employees at all levels of the IT department. Also, from your vendors. Vendors are out there, they're in the space. They're selling you the latest and greatest upgrade to a system, and they're selling it to your competitors. So learn from your vendors, ask them for information, check with them and say, did Gartner, do you have the report from Gartner on that? Can I have a copy? Um, Definitely leverage any vendor that you work with or that's selling to you to gain more knowledge for you and for your team. And then the external part. And externally, it's the newsletters. It's the what are other industries doing? Where am I talking to other individuals that have a different mindset, a different thought? Because when you're only looking internally, you're limiting things tremendously. If you're all reading the same tech newsletter, you're limiting things significantly. So there's industry newsletters, there's agile groups, there's organizations, nonprofits. There's a ton of places to go get education and information. I know personally in Austin, the Austin Women in Technology, Austin Technology Council, Austin Technology Forum, Agile Austin. There's a, a slew. That's 400 probably organizations that you can become a part of and get your people to become a part of, to hear what's going on in the industry and what's landing and what's landing well in other organizations. We can't test all the new technologies. We all can't test them. But if they're, because of all the AI churn recently, like if you're ready to start, do you want to start from the thousands of products that
Yeah.
are available, or do you want to start with 4 or 5 that other companies are being successful with? So, how do you gain that information? And then, when it comes back into the organization, you have to give your people the chance to share it.
Yeah.
And it's somewhat of an expectation on my team that, what are you hearing? What's new? What's one new thing you want us to look at as an organization? And have people report out. If they go to a conference and they come back and they only talk to the person they sit next to and they don't share it with everyone, you're not getting the leverage that you could to really expedite your knowledge and your ability to adopt new technology.
Now, that's fascinating. So, a couple of things there, because it's almost like the last point was almost like learn locally and share globally, right? So, somebody goes out, conference, networking event, learn something new. And if you have a culture or a team that comes back and like, hey, we missed you last night or last week, you're training, good. And they just stop there. It's like it didn't draw an opportunity to say, why don't you expand on it at lunchtime and spend 10 minutes talking about what you learned? What did you hear? New technology, like you said, internally, you might not be able to test, but somebody else that you bumped into at a networking event was talking about. So that is interesting. But also, it brings up another interesting opportunity to be more intentional professionally with learning, right? Because we talked about all these committees and organizations and conferences. So you can almost need to plan out your career where it's like, I'm gonna go learn something new this month or this quarter. So let's talk about being intentional with this, right? So you got the individual IT professional, which can be intentional, like say, here are the sources of information I'm going to look for. I'm gonna spend a certain amount of time internally with my coworkers, certain amount of opportunity with people maybe outside of IT, and maybe externally, like these specific conferences I might try to get funded by my job that I normally couldn't pay for myself. So let's talk about that kind of like, everybody in IT thinking about, what the next 5 years look like. Where should I be going and what should I be learning?
I wish we could see 5 years forward,
Yes.
because if we went back 5 years and then thought we were going to be here where we are today, we would have been wrong. So, I think there's a lot of intentionality around it, as we evolve our job descriptions, as we evolve our job postings, as our systems and our vendors evolve, as our customers evolve. You're hearing what the demands and what the expectations are, and then taking that. And I guess I always start with the individual, like you, William, your individual IT development plan for this year. What skills do you want to improve upon? And you know, and then making sure that I'm challenging and stretching.
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
right. So you're like, well, I want to become an AI expert. Well, what does that look like? What does that mean? You're talking about generative AI. You're talking about something more futuristic than that? Where are you thinking? Because as people have skill gaps, you want them to improve, and you want them to be interested in the areas where they're going to be learning and growing, because they'll be more engaged in that process, and want to share because they want to see that implemented in their place of work. And so, having those individual conversations, netting it out, understanding, and then seeing what else. um, as a leader, I should take as
Yeah.
a leadership team, you should probably cover the what else, as long as you've got your individuals engaged at where they have interest, and where you need input. Um, and then constantly reevaluating that, like quarterly. It changes very fast. Somebody may be very interested in one aspect around the a system you have for your internal operations team. Somebody may be very system focused, somebody may be very technology focused, somebody may be very security focused. Well, yeah, we all have those. But just building out a plan and knowing that people are doing it, that they have the support, that if this means 5 conferences this year, that we're very intentional about what we expect when they come back from the conference to share and report. If I can't afford boot camps for every new thing we do, then where can I get some lower cost options to get that same information and training? Who are people we know? Who can we connect with? Which of those outside organizations, whether they be vendors or whether they be nonprofit, technology groups, can we leverage and embrace and gain that knowledge without spending the boot camp dollars for the week in Hawaii?
I love it. Hey, by the way, boot camp in Hawaii sounds fantastic. I mean, you're
Let's
talking about a
go.
very, yeah, let's do this. It's like,
Let's
take
go.
something hard, take some training that people don't like to do, roll it up, bundle up all together and say, you know what? We know you're going to hate this 2 weeks of training. We're going to throw some HR training there as well and some other internal you don't want to do, but we're going to have it. The venue's going to be in Hawaii. So that will be interesting. And I will be thinking outside of a box for the leader, right? How do you make the training itself more palatable, more exciting to get people engaged? Um,
I think another point that I think people forget, and this is probably not IT specific, but you go to college, you get a degree, you go to through certification training, you get a certificate, and we continue to learn
yes,
every day.
yeah,
So, what are you doing to continue to learn? Writing code in the same language you've coded in for the last 2 years and not doing anything different is not learning. It's
right,
producing, it's
yes.
executing. And so, figuring out the intentionality around what, and then how, and where's the time coming from, how we're how are we committing to this? How are we supporting this? How are we paying for our trip to Hawaii? All of those
Definitely.
are
Yeah.
factors that come into play. It doesn't take a big budget. When I moved to Austin, I didn't know anyone. I was running the IT department for a pretty large regional healthcare company. And I was like, I need vendors. I need options. My team knows what they've done in the past. They don't know what's available. And
Right.
so it was an evolution, right? To get engaged and get active in the community, get some other CIOs and directors of IT that I could talk to and really learn what they were doing and how they were sourcing things and what they were finding, and then actively getting my staff engaged as well. It's it doesn't take a large budget. I didn't have any education budget
Yeah.
at that time,
Yeah.
but I was willing as a leader to spend my time and occasionally my money to go to these events and build my network and connect with people and learn from.
That's fascinating because we're really talking about just lifelong learning skills, irregardless of what industry you're in, what profession you're in. So, irregardless what the technology does, you still need to. Some people call it soft skills, some people call it people skills. It's like you have an idea, no matter what it is, but you need to communicate it. So, practicing your presentation skills, doing some basic data analysis. How do you take something that you did an analysis of to create a hypothesis? How do you present it? Uh, how do you go and get help from other people? Team up with two or three other people to put something together, maybe for a new proposal, something to address the challenge. So it's an exciting time, right? Not only for IT, but for everybody to continue to learn. And that does really point to something you mentioned before about IT leadership and opportunities that you're looking at your team. Could be a team of 20, could be a team, that could be a team of five, right? Team of 5, 20, 30, 100, 500, and you're looking around at your team and you're kind of taking care of them, right? One on ones, looking at what their career path and look like. So you know what? This person been an analyst for like 3 years. I'm worried about burnout. Let's talk to him or her. Let's see what else they might do to move them around as opposed to letting them like suffer in silence. So let's talk about once again these opportunities for the leader, right? If it could be CIO or maybe it's a different title, right? Because we always talk about leadership as in the title, but if you observing the people around you, maybe how you can lend a helping hand to others, as they look at money, happiness and career pathing, and just always being challenged.
Absolutely. I mean, it's ongoing, right? And it's getting embedded with your business and your business partners and understanding their issues and their challenges, and being creative and innovative both with the technology and the approach and the pricing, right? So it takes a variety of soft skills. It takes a variety of options, and it takes a village. It's not one person. Well, sometimes it's one person. The CEO comes in and says, "This is the shiny bell I want."
Yeah,
Sometimes they have the pull and the power to do that, but as a owner or with ownership in the company, you want your team to really buy into it, right? And so if once you start looking at that shiny bell, there's other options. You have to educate, influence, you know, um, give people an opportunity to really get out of their shell and sell in a different manner, um, to get the best solution for whatever problem or issue you're trying to solve.
yeah, and that's really interesting because we kind of hinted at this, right? This concept of the shiny object, and executive CEO, they see a lot of shiny objects, and IT is looking at that, right? And they got to IT is the one that has to actually make it work, right? So let's talk about different approaches for IT, saying there's 100 different options with 1,000 vendors, many different ways to do it, and it's just flooding in from all over the place, right? HR says, "Hey, we just saw this new tech. The legal department is asking for this. Why are we still using this type of system?" Got these different lines of businesses all over it, inundated at home with new tech. So when all this new shiny stuff come in and CIOs and their teams are looking at what's possible, how can they like kind of get their hands around what's possible for their particular organizations? And if you have fun
I
with
was
that,
hoping
don't
you
you?
would say with smart IT in 10 years, it won't be this shiny object. It'll be
I mean,
much different. But I
it'll be
guess
a
that's
dull
not the
object.
case.
Here we go. It'll be less. Actually, it's less shiny after you find out how hard it is to implement and how much it costs. There we go, right there.
Well, that's the case. I mean, I think all IT leaders have done this. Most project management offices have done this, right? You have to, within the boundaries of your organization, know, how to best function in that situation, and it's somewhat of an intake process, right? What problem are we trying to solve? Um, what options do we have to do that from a technology standpoint? How do those compare from a pros and cons standpoint? How long in the future is it going to really benefit us as an organization? Because if I'd taken a stand with Chat GPT-3, you know, it's evolving, right?
Yeah.
So, what is your ongoing cost? What is your ROI? What are your options? Do you want to start with a pilot, or are we going big bang, right? If we're implementing a new ERP system, once you sign that contract, you're kind of in, right?
Hey, I heard.
However,
Yeah.
when I'm testing AI
Yeah.
in a pilot scenario for my sales team or for my marketing team, it's very different. And so understanding your parameters around that governance and following it. And if that governance doesn't exist, starting to put it into place, and not so it's bureaucratic, not to prevent ideas, not to prevent movement forward, but just to create a process in which you're bringing those senior leaders together in the organization to say, this is what we have on our plate. And so it's twice the capital budget spend for next year than we had this year. So how would you like to move forward? We can double my budget and my staff, or we can prioritize, right?
Yeah.
So let's figure out which way is going to work best for us as an organization, because we don't want to strangle the organization by staying on the current technologies only. We don't want a bunch of rogue IT. We can't afford that either because of the challenges that come with it and the time investments to fix it later. Um, so how do we get to a happy medium? Maybe, yes, these are the three critical projects for the company. That's what we can put on the schedule. And then we have time to do a couple small pilots. So yes, sales, you can pilot this, or yes, marketing, you can pilot that and we can support it, but not, you can't rogue IT it in a silo where we don't know what's going on and what impact is having to our security in our environment. And, if we're doing something in a pilot state, we're learning with them. So go back to your learning plans and your development plans, and see who's the best partner that's going to go the extra mile for that customer.
So, Diana, if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like you have become an expert of not saying the two-letter word of no. So you're allowing the business to make decisions by giving them informed information and make their choices. So I love that.
Well, I think we all have to learn to be a little more business savvy, and see how we can lead in the business and with the business. And I think it's very easy. And a long time ago, I used to say no pretty fast. I learned a rule from somebody when I moved to town about my boss at the time, and they said, you ask 3 times. And she says no the third time, then it's dead. It's not going to happen. But I didn't want to be that same person for my staff and for my customers, right? And so I learned to say the slow no as opposed to the fast no. People would come in and they would have a great idea, and it would be like, yeah, there's all kinds of security risk associated with that. And, um, and so, taking in the information as an intake process, not as a decision process. And by doing that, I was able to say, let me gather the information, let me look at some options. Instead of saying no, then I could go back when I had more information and say, we really can't do this, but let's look at these other two options. Are these feasible for you? Will they get you the same outcome you're looking for? So, understanding the problem, understanding the people with the problem, understanding there's more than one way to solve it, and then having that discussion and bringing them in the loop.
I love that because right, because it's never really IT's decision, right? We help inform, we help provide some guardrails. Want to make sure the business don't run out there, and next thing you know, we're exposing private information to a third party because they said AI system would actually generate quicker results. Like someone has to make sure that we're legal, we're compliant, we're ethical, we're meeting the mission and the guidelines and the culture. So we need somebody to actually say that right. So let the rest of the business be very aggressive, very out there, and as we shape these different ideas, throwing them out there. So let's talk about this facilitating the discussions, right? We can brainstorm what's possible, right? The business looking at competitors, they're looking at what they see from the industry and conferences, and then we have our eye on what cost, effort, what current resources are. So I like what you mentioned before, right? You can give me some more staffing, right? You can give me some more budget, you can give me some more time, and anything's possible, right? But the business understand those trade-offs, right? So I think in early years, IT was a little clumsy with the way they expressed it. But I love the way you're talking about this. So let's take in information, let's process it, let's come back with some alternatives, a smarter way to have that discussion. And I think most people kind of understand that.
I think it's that, but I think uh, the other thing I want to add is, as you think about smart IT in the future, is you want your team generating those ideas. You want your team going to the business and saying, hey, Sally's really having a problem over here with this system. And I think there's some things we can do to really give her a better experience and serve our customers better. How does this sound to you? This is something we can do in X number of hours, dollars, time. And and really make her, really change her role and her responsibilities in the organization. So, that's what the learning comes in, right?
Right.
And then being intentional is not be waiting for them to ask, not
Yes.
waiting for them to demand, not waiting for them to bring back the shiny bell,
Yeah.
but knowing what's happening in your industry, knowing what's happening with technology, and bringing those ideas and those use cases to them, driving the technology and the footprint as opposed to serving their demands.
I love that. You're talking our language of the show. It's like, hey, we've been paying attention to internal and external factors, and we have an idea like how can we speed things up, improve this process? How can we have our customers wait less, right? Or get our product or service to the customer faster? And that's what the business is talking about all the time. And so you mentioned before, I think about this almost kind of going to the front lines. So let's talk about this, what the front lines of where the customer is, that the reason your organization actually exists, right?
Right.
Which is the key piece, right?
Well, that's so important to me. And I think as we've moved from a lot of waterfall development processes to agile processes, and we think about our demos, I continue to walk into organizations and ask who's in the demo. And they're making a change to a client system and the client's not there. They're making a change to the accounting system and the accountant's not there. So where is your end user in this process? They're the ones that have the pain. They're the ones that know what the best way to fix it. Same in IT, if you're constantly pushing code to production with errors in it, your customers are screaming, your management team's not happy, but your developers know why. The people that are releasing the code, your QA, your developer people, they know why. Go ask them. Get to the
Yes.
get to the front line. Find out, what are we doing wrong? What needs to be fixed? Well, our test environment's not reality. So you're asking us to half test. And when we
Yes.
half test, it works fine. But when we real test in production, well, oh no, we're not testing in production. Oh yeah, we are. You
Yeah.
know, so that's
Yeah.
that's with your IT team, figure out what's going on, and it's the same with your customers, right? You think you've got the greatest system, and I remember the day when we went from kind of data entry, filling in the form, to
Yeah.
mouse and the click downs, right? So
Yes.
before I could do my data entry of this form in, you know, 16 seconds. And now that I have 42 drop downs, it takes 25
Yes.
seconds. Well, when you're demoing that to the end user, they immediately
Yeah.
know. They know what a mouse click is and how long it takes, right? And so you're getting the feedback you need to be successful with your customers. When you're I value product owners and product managers and platform managers and what they bring to an organization. Um, but putting them as your demo audience is not the same as having the end user.
What's funny, you mentioned that story. I had that exact story happen before, probably like 15 years ago. So it's going to be, can he do data entry? These five people in a row, and they use their hands and the keyboard and the numbers on the side, the right hand side of the keyboard, and they enter a lot of numbers in there. So they're about to roll out this new system, and like you mentioned, it went from a lot of that key entry to a lot more graphical interface, where a lot more mouse clicks and drop downs, and they were struggling big time with this. They're like, "What is this?" Right? You actually slowed productivity,
And it
and like you mentioned, yeah.
And the first thing people
Go
think
ahead.
of it, well, you didn't train them, is like, no, we took away their shortcuts. We took away this, we took away that, and we didn't know it.
And we didn't know it because we never went and asked them. And that's something as simple as walking down the hallway, find out how do people work day in and day out, and remember why is IT here, right? And if you don't observe what the end users are doing, if you don't observe what the customer is doing, you're kind of like in the dark. And like you said, you're almost in the back seat waiting for the CEO to go to the conference and come back and tell you what's new, as opposed to you going out there, going to the front lines, seeing what's happening. It's like, okay, I'm seeing how they're using that interface. And there's another way of configuring that interface or a new system we can change that can make a difference. Uh, so it looks like there's a lot of opportunities for leadership, one to help support their current talent pool, help them develop over the next skill set development over maybe the next decade, and then just be more relevant to the business. So if you're talking to all your future IT leaders who may have been there for 5, 6 years and thinking, you know what, in 4 or 5 years, I want to be a CIO or a CTO, or you know what, heck, I'm going to switch over and be a CFO. Who knows, right? The sky's the limit these days. So what do you tell those folks who are like in the early stage of looking around and like, what should I be thinking about right now to prep myself for the future?
I think the best preparation, of course, is, success in what you're doing. Um, and that comes in a lot of varieties. So, you're in a role, you have roles and responsibilities, so kind of projecting for yourself. If I'm wildly successful this year, what have I achieved? Or if I'm wildly successful in the next 3 years, what have I achieved? And setting those goals and documenting those goals and measuring to those goals and know what you're achieving. If you're looking to go into a different role that has different skill requirements, figure out what those gaps are. I work closely with several of my staff, and they were business systems analysts that wanted to be product managers or product owners. And I was like, that's a great aspiration. Let's figure out what you need and what you have. And I take it pretty straightforward. Like, here's the job description for that role you want. Here's how you meet each of those items, like with examples, right? So kind of like what you would put on your resume, or what you would, an example you would share in the interview. If you were asked about this as a CFO, you have to have your CPA, right? So that we won't use that one, but you've had to have financial analysis is a big requirement of any CFO, right? So what have you done in that space? What does that look like? If you had to tell me your best story today from all your prior experience, what is that, William? And then what is it? What should it look like? And once you break down that target job description and kind of look at those variances and gaps, then you can set out a path, and you can say, I don't have enough financial analysis. So as we look at roles and responsibilities in IT for the next year, I'm going to take on managing all the capital spend and the capital budgets, and doing the variation, the roll up and the variation of how we're going against our capital budget. I have somebody that's really good at that, and they've been doing it. But if I take that on, I'm going to get firsthand experience that benefits me as I go into the next role. So there's always ways within your current role to, work with your supervisor, work with your staff, and figure out how to plug those gaps. But some of it you have to go outside. You're not going to become a CPA sitting in a CIO role unless you're intentionally going to college and sitting for your CPA, right? So sometimes it's outside, sometimes it's inside, but it's taking the time for you yourself to know where you want to go, know what skills you need, and how to get there. And, it's something I've done in my career. Every time I've kind of taken a step back and said, this job's becoming very routine. What do I want to do in my next job? Well, I want to get closer to the engineers and the hands-on work more with the clients. I want to do something different. So, it drives, where you move next in the organization. It drives how you assign the work. In IT, there's always plenty of work, right? And sometimes almost always there's too much work. So, being intentional and taking time and thinking about your career and where your gaps are and how you can fill those in your current role is always the first step.
I love it, Diane. There's been some great information for my audience who are really looking to figure out, what's next for them. How can they start to think about prepping themselves for even more success? So I really loved your insights you provided today.
Well, you're welcome. And, I think to full circle it back around, it's really all about the people. The people and the support they have from their leader, the support they need from their leader to enhance their skills, upskill, enhance the processes, serve your customers. IT's always been, the service organization, and it will continue to be, but think about how you can be more consultative to your customers, how you can bring new ideas to them, as opposed to just being an order taker and doing what they ask.
I love it. Hey, thank you very much for your time today, Diane. This has been another episode of the Smart IT Podcast. Until the next episode, if you need any more information, you can go to williamreed.info. Take care. Thanks for joining another episode of the Smart IT Podcast, where we explore what's next for IT and disrupt the status quo, simplify the complex, and reduce risk together. If you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, and leave your comments. And for more Smart IT wisdom, check out my website at williamreed.info.